Have you ever walked away from a conversation and replayed it in your head thinking, why did I let them get away with that? Some people don't argue to understand. They interrupt, belittle, and dominate just to feel powerful. And somehow, we let them. But what if there was a way to shut down that behavior with just one sentence, not with anger, but with calm precision? We all know that moment, that feeling of walking away from an interaction, stomach tight, mind spinning. You wonder why you didn't speak up, why you let their sarcasm go unchecked. Some people don't use words to share truth. They use them as weapons, to diminish, to provoke, to remind you of your place, while they interrupt and throw shade with zero hesitation. And somehow, they expect you to just absorb it in silence. But Stoicism, real inner strength, offers us another path. It teaches us that power doesn't come from ego or noise, but from presence, from being able to respond, not react, from clarity, from calm. In this video, you're about to discover how to neutralize rude behavior without raising your voice, not through fury, but through focus. If you've ever wanted to say less but mean more, stay right here, because what you're about to learn could transform the way you handle confrontation forever. Let's start with the first principle. Number 1, I'm not the one. Try someone who tolerates nonsense. Ever met someone who wasn't joking, wasn't confused, just flat out rude? As if they were testing how much disrespect you'd accept while still smiling politely? I know that script too well. I used to live in it, playing the role of peacekeeper, biting my tongue, nodding through subtle jabs. I kept telling myself, be nice, keep the peace. But there comes a moment when the silence you're maintaining starts to rot your dignity from the inside. When that false calm begins to feel more like betrayal than peace. I remember mine clearly. It was a meeting at my old job. There was a guy, let's call him Colin. Colin thrived on theatrics, always late, always loud, always hiding sarcasm behind a mask of fake confidence. And on the day I was presenting a strategy I had poured weeks of work into, he smirked and said, "Do you even understand what you're saying?" Sounds like a lot of fluff to me. Time slowed. That heat surged in my chest. Every part of me screamed, "Say something." And this time I did. Calm, grounded, clear. "Colin," I said, "I'm not the one. Try someone who tolerates nonsense." He blinked. The smirk disappeared, and silence followed. No one laughed. No one jumped in to defend him either. Because in truth, they had all been waiting for someone, anyone, to finally draw the line. That day, I did. Here's something you won't hear in leadership books. Most rude people aren't powerful. They're just unopposed. Their ego feeds on silence, on the good manners of people too exhausted or too polite to confront them. But the moment you disrupt that pattern, not with rage, but with firm composure, you pull their stage out from under them. You shatter the illusion of control. Because most people who thrive in chaos do so because they have no idea what peace feels like. They yell not from courage, but from fear. They insult because they're terrified of turning inward, and that's not strength. That's just noise. You don't need to match their volume. You don't need to play along with their dysfunction. Sometimes all it takes is one line, delivered with unshakable poise to make it clear. You've mistaken my silence for weakness. That ends now. Yes, when you start setting boundaries, people will talk. They'll say you've changed. Let them. When you no longer show up to be disrespected, some will label you difficult. Let them. You weren't born to carry the weight of every fragile ego and insecure outburst. You were born to protect your peace. And peace, my friend, is a daily discipline. So, next time someone tries to knock you down with slick comments or superiority games in front of others, don't flinch. Don't explain. Just look them in the eye, calm and unshaken, and say, "Try someone else. I'm not the one." Because the day you stop explaining yourself to those who disrespect you is the day you reclaim every ounce of your power. Just like that, with a single sentence, you reclaim your power. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standards, and that's where true strength begins. Now let's talk about one of the most underrated power moves you can make: choosing not to be offended. I'm not offended. I just don't value your opinion enough. It's not defiance, it's clarity. Clean, controlled, final. I remember this moment vividly. It was one of those memories where stillness becomes louder than any noise. There was a guy I used to know. Let's call him Derek. The kind of person who hides envy behind the mask of concern. You know the type, always ready with a backhanded compliment like it's a gift wrapped in barbed wire. One day I shared something deeply personal online, a creative project I'd been nurturing for months. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It mattered. And right on cue, Derek commented, "This feels kind of cringe. Are you sure this is the vibe you want to go for?" But this time I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I didn't shrink. I just replied calmly and firmly, "I'm not offended. I just don't value your opinion enough to care." No sarcasm, no anger, just clarity. Here's the truth most people miss. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Some people don't speak from experience or insight. They speak from insecurity. They haven't built anything meaningful, but they hand out criticism like it's currency. And if you let every comment through your mental gates, your soul becomes a marketplace of other people's noise. Stoic wisdom reminds us of this. Your mind is your sanctuary. Protect it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the opinions of others aren't facts, they're reflections. And often, those reflections say more about them than they ever could about you. Have you ever noticed that the loudest critics are often the ones farthest from the fight? They're not risking, not creating, not showing up. They sit in the bleachers of life, shouting at those who dare to step into the arena. But when you respond with calm indifference, not ego, not rage, just stillness, they lose all leverage. Because it was never about the insult. It was always about your reaction. You don't need to be offended by someone who doesn't even understand your mission. Their voice isn't your compass. And it's not arrogance to say so. It's self-respect. It's understanding that not everyone deserves a key to your emotional world. So, the next time someone throws shade wrapped in a joke, or delivers a cheap jab disguised as honesty, pause, breathe, smile, and say it with grace. I'm not offended. I just don't value your opinion enough. That right there is the kind of power they don't know how to process. Because nothing rattles the insecure more than someone who no longer needs their permission to be. They expect a reaction. But when all you give them is calm clarity, the mirror becomes too much to bear. Do you need a hug or something? The words left my mouth slowly, evenly. And the room, once loud with chuckles and casual cruelty, fell into complete silence. Not awkward silence, clear silence. Because in that moment, everyone saw it for what it really was. Not humor, not charm, just plain insecurity wearing a day mask. Here's the stoic truth behind that kind of behavior. People who constantly try to tear others down are usually drowning in their own unspoken fears. They insult to avoid facing their own stagnation. They get loud because silence would force them to confront themselves. So when you calmly name what's really happening, not to humiliate, but to expose the truth, they shrink. Not because they were insulted, but because they were finally seen. And attention seekers? They don't fear being laughed at. They fear being understood. We live in a time where shock value is mistaken for substance, where sarcasm passes for wit. People say the most outrageous things not because they believe them, but because they're starving for a reaction. They want conflict. They want the spotlight. But when you don't give them your rage, when instead you offer unflinching clarity, the entire script changes. They expect a sparring match. What they get is a mirror. And that's why this one line is so effective. That's a strange way to beg for attention. It doesn't lash out. It doesn't escalate. It simply reveals. And ego, more than anything else, fears exposure. Not every insult deserves your energy. But some moments do deserve truth, delivered without venom, without volume, but with piercing stillness and precision. So the next time someone takes a shot cloaked in a joke, or wraps a cheap jab in casual conversation, don't sink to their level. Don't engage in the chaos. Just smile, tilt your head, and say it slowly, clearly. That's a strange way to beg for attention. Then watch the performance fall apart. Which brings us to something just as important as speaking up. Knowing when to stay silent. And that leads us into the next idea. Number 4. Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. There's a specific kind of noise that doesn't come from traffic or machinery. It comes from people. Not those who speak to connect, but those who speak to dominate, to fill the air, to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. You know the type. They treat every pause like a threat. Their voice gets louder, not because they have more to say, but because they're terrified of what might surface in the quiet. And after a while, you start to realize, every time they speak, it becomes a living reminder of how powerful silence really is. I remember one group chat in particular. There was this guy, let's call him Jordan, always the first to chime in, always the last to leave, never without an opinion. No matter the topic, philosophy, relationships, money, books, he had something to say, but rarely anything meaningful. His takes were recycled, misinformed, or soaked in negativity. It wasn't conversation. It was theater. One day, right in the middle of a discussion, Jordan confidently corrected someone on a subject he clearly didn't understand. And I didn't sigh. I didn't push back. I just said, clear and cool as glass. You know, every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. No aggression, no sarcasm, just truth, steady and sharp. And the chat went silent. Because here's the thing, truth doesn't need volume, it just needs presence. Some people don't talk to help, they talk to be noticed, because silence would force them to confront who they really are, without the crowd or the echo. That's why they interrupt. That's why they ramble. That's why their confidence often outruns their knowledge. It's not intelligence, it's fear wearing a loud disguise. But the Stoic view is different. Power doesn't live in how loudly you speak. It lives in how intentionally you choose your words or your silence. There is strength in restraint. There is dignity in brevity. There is wisdom in saying nothing at all, because sometimes saying less speaks more. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say nothing at all. Silence, used with intention, has a way of reclaiming the room. And there is real mastery in not needing to prove anything with noise. Like the old saying goes, empty barrels make the most noise. And it holds true. Often, the rudest voices in the room are the most uninformed. Louder, yes, but not wiser. They confuse dominance with depth, sarcasm with intelligence, volume with respect. So the next time someone tries to hijack a conversation with empty confidence or tired commentary, don't rise to their level. Don't try to outshout them or match their energy. Instead, meet them with stillness. Look them in the eye, steady, composed, and say, "Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence." That sentence doesn't just hush the noise. It reclaims the space. It dignifies the moment. And more importantly, it reminds everyone listening that true power doesn't shout. It stands still. Because restraint, that's not weakness. It's wisdom in motion, which brings us to the next kind of strength, emotional sovereignty. Number 5, if you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder. Most people who insult you aren't seeking truth. They're seeking control. They want to provoke you, to see you flinch, crack, crumble. Because if they can trigger a reaction, they feel powerful. But what happens when you don't react? When you don't blink, explain, or shrink? That's when their illusion breaks. There is power in smiling, genuinely, calmly, and saying, "If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder." It's not arrogance, it's emotional maturity. A quiet signal that you've outgrown. The version of yourself who once bled for every careless word. I remember being younger, when insults cut deep. There was a guy, Lucas. He mocked my clothes and laughed. "You actually think that looks good?" I played it off, laughed along, then went home and changed. Another time, someone scoffed at my dreams. "That's adorable. You think you'll actually make it?" And for weeks after that, I doubted everything. But life reshapes you, not through applause, but through rejection, heartbreak, and lonely nights standing in the ruins of what you thought was safe. Eventually, I stopped listening. Not because people got kinder, but because I got clearer. The truth is, people can only wound you deeply when some part of you believes what they're saying. But when you know who you are, when you've weathered worse, lost more, and rebuilt, from rubble, those cheap shots stop landing. They bounce off armor that was forged in fire. Now when someone throws shade or tries a subtle dig, I don't get defensive. I look them in the eye and say, "If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder. Because if you think a passive-aggressive jab will shake me, you clearly don't know my story." Here's the harsh truth. Some people only feel tall when you shrink. They want you insecure. It makes you easier to manage. They want you emotional so they can twist the narrative to suit them. But when you stay calm, grounded, and unshaken, you reclaim every ounce of power they hope to steal. That one line, it isn't just a clever comeback. It's psychological clarity. It says, "You don't define me. Your words don't build or break me. I've faced storms you wouldn't survive. And you think this will rattle me?" It's not denial. It's discernment. You're not pretending they didn't try. You're just choosing not to carry it with you. Stoic philosophy teaches that freedom lies in self-mastery. Not reacting isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you've cried, failed, been misunderstood, and still moved forward, a cheap insult doesn't deserve your energy. So next time someone tries to bruise your spirit with a fake joke, a snide remark, or an obvious dig, don't match their chaos. Smile, hold your posture, and calmly say, "If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder." Then walk away. Not in retreat, but in quiet triumph. Because silence from someone strong is louder than any scream from someone still desperate to be seen. We ended the last section with a truth. When you stay calm and steady, the storm can't touch you. Now let's explore a line that doesn't defend, doesn't attack. It simply removes the need to engage at all. It doesn't shout. It doesn't plead. It doesn't even try to win. Instead, it makes something crystal clear. The other person doesn't even qualify for your attention. And that, right there, is where the power lies. You see, in any confrontation, there are two kinds of people: those who seek understanding and those who seek control. The second type, they're not interested in truth. They want chaos. They don't debate, they perform. And the stage they love to perform on? Your emotions. But when you say calmly and without emotion, "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me," it's like removing the floor beneath their performance. The show ends. The spotlight fades. You're telling them, "You don't get to pull me into your circus. You're not even in the same ring." Let me give you a moment that proved this. At my old job, there was a guy named Trent. He had a gift, not for insight or solutions, but for stirring discomfort. He loved lobbing passive-aggressive remarks into meetings just to shake the mood. One day, I was presenting a strategic idea, thoughtful, refined, ready, and right in the middle of it, Trent leaned back and said with that familiar smirk, "Not bad for someone who's usually 5 minutes late." Now, I had options. I could have gone off, fired back with something just as sharp, but I didn't. I just looked at him, calm and composed, and said, "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me." Then I turned right back to the presentation, like he never said a word. The atmosphere shifted, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't have to. Not because I tried to dominate, but because I simply didn't participate. See, people like Trent thrive on attention, even negative attention. But when you refuse to give them any response at all, you reveal what they fear most: irrelevance. That's the deeper truth. You don't win by trading insults. You win by becoming untouchable, by making it known that not everyone is worthy of access to your emotional world. You don't owe your peace to people who only show up to disturb it. And that line, it works because it hits their deepest fear. You're not shaken. You're not hurt. You don't even see them as a rival. You see them as noise. And in that moment, they realize they never had the power they thought they did. So how do you deliver it? With calm. Look them in the eye. Say it steady. Then redirect. Change the topic. Walk away. Don't explain. Don't repeat. Just let the silence that follows speak louder than their attempt to get a rise out of you. Because in a world full of people desperate to be seen, desperate to feel important by provoking you, your indifference becomes the loudest disruption of all. So next time someone throws shade, stirs the pot, or tries to drag you into a fight, stay grounded. Look them straight in the eye and say, "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me," and then carry on like the storm never touched you, because it didn't. Now, let's talk about one final phrase. One that doesn't even need to raise an eyebrow to land like a thunderclap. It's subtle, cutting, and devastatingly true. The moment you refuse to react, something powerful happens. The dynamic shifts. Suddenly, you're no longer the one being diminished. They are. You're not flustered. You're not defensive. You're calm, clear, observant. And in that quiet, composed posture, you dismantle their illusion right there in front of everyone. Because here's the deeper truth. Most insults, they're not about you. They're about the person saying them. Their desperation to feel important, to feel seen, to feel like they have control. But when you stay still, composed, and unmoved, they lose the very thing they were chasing: emotional leverage. And the moment you call out the insecurity hiding behind their polished insult, you don't just protect yourself, you make them see themselves. Even if just for a second, that reflection can sting more than anything you could ever say in retaliation. Here's a little pro tip. After delivering that calm, precise sentence, pause. Don't follow it with an explanation. Don't soften it. Let the silence do the work. Because the true impact, it isn't just in the words.
It's in the stillness that follows, in the way the room goes quiet, in the way everyone around sees what just happened. So the next time someone throws shade dressed as wit, or slips in a jab under the disguise of politeness, remember this
line. That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure. Say it with composure. Say it without flinching. Then let your silence finish what your sentence started. Because when you master your response, you master the moment. And when you master the moment, you become untouchable. These aren't just comebacks, they're calm boundaries, quiet declarations, Stoic reminders that not everyone is worthy of your emotional attention. They say, without needing to shout, "You don't get access to my peace just because you're loud." Because true strength, it's not about how loudly you react. It's about how little someone else's chaos can shake your center. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, insult you, or challenge your confidence, don't take the bait. Don't jump into the storm. Don't raise your voice. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. You don't even need to explain. One clear sentence, delivered with the precision of a scalpel, not the force of a sword, can cut through the noise more effectively than any dramatic outburst. Let them sit with what they said. Let your silence echo longer than their attitude ever could. Say it with a steady voice, then walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you're focused. You have more important things to build. A mind to sharpen, a life to protect. And if this video resonated with you, drop a comment below. Stay silent. And if you'd like to keep learning how to master strength through stillness, go ahead and hit subscribe quietly, because there's more to come. And it's exactly the kind of wisdom that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Until next time, stand tall, speak with purpose, and protect your peace.